What if one Mexican state gave the world tequila and mariachi, buried a city under a meter of ice in July, then turned around and hit an active volcano with 300,000 people on its doorstep? From canyons deeper than you'd believe to lakes that are literally vanishing, Jalisco doesn't just anchor the western soul of Mexico. It defines what Mexico means. Here are 25 wild facts that prove it. Part 25. The Deadly Neighbor. Jalisco shares a border with something terrifying. Volcán de Fuego de Colima, one of the most active volcanoes in all of Mexico. Rising 3,820 meters or 12,533 feet, this stratovolcano has erupted more than 40 times since 1576. An estimated 300,000 people live within 40 kilometers or 25 miles of the summit. Its explosive eruptions send pyroclastic flows racing down slopes at speeds that can exceed 90 kilometers per hour or 56 miles per hour, while ash plumes rise over 10 kilometers or 33,000 feet. The 1913 eruption was so violent that it destroyed the entire summit, creating a crater that's slowly refilled with a lava dome that continues growing and collapsing. Scientists monitor it constantly because they know the next major eruption isn't a question of if, only when. And that volcano isn't the only ancient force still shaping Jalisco. Hidden in the highlands, something equally mysterious predates even the Spanish conquest. Part 24. The Circular Pyramids. Every pyramid you've ever seen in Mexico has sharp corners and straight edges. The pyramids of Jalisco have neither. The Guachimontones archaeological site near Teochitlan features Mexico's most distinctive circular concentric pyramid complexes. Built by the Teochitlan culture between 300 BCE and 900 CE. The site features cone-shaped pyramids surrounded by circular platforms and plazas, arranged in concentric rings unlike most other structures in Mesoamerica. The largest pyramid rises 18 meters or 59 feet and is surrounded by 13 smaller structures forming a perfect circle. Archaeologists believe the circular layout reflects the culture's cosmology and religious ceremonies, possibly used for ritual dances and astronomical observations. The Guachimontones prove that Jalisco's indigenous peoples developed architectural innovations within Western Mesoamerica's distinct traditions, separate from the great urban centers of central Mexico. And beneath those ancient circles, the ground itself tells an even older story. Part 23. The lake that shouldn't exist, but is disappearing. Mexico's largest freshwater lake, Lake Chapala, didn't form from rain or rivers. It was born from a continent trying to tear itself apart. The Jalisco block is slowly being pulled away from the mainland, and the ground between them is ripping open, sinking into deep cracks called grabens. Lake Chapala formed in one of these giant cracks, pooling water in the sunken rift valley created by the continental divorce. The same fault systems are still active today. Residents living along the lakeshore have documented cracked walls and shifting foundations in their own homes. And now, that ancient lake is vanishing. Stretching 80 kilometers or 50 miles long and covering 1,100 square kilometers or 425 square miles at capacity, it supplies the drinking water for millions of people in Guadalajara. Since the 1950s, water diversions, droughts, and urban demand have caused dramatic shrinkage. In 2004, it was named Threatened Lake of the Year. If the trend continues, Lake Chapala could face severe shrinkage again, threatening water supplies for millions. And carved into the edge of Jalisco's largest city, that same tectonic violence created something equally dramatic. Part 22. The Mega Abyss. Carved into the northeastern edge of Guadalajara lies Barranca de Huentitan, a canyon so deep it's often called Mexico's Grand Canyon. Stretching 600 meters or 1,970 feet deep on average, with walls plunging 520 meters or 1,710 feet at its steepest. The canyon was carved by the Rio Grande de Santiago over millions of years. What makes this remarkable is its location. The canyon sits inside one of Mexico's largest metropolitan areas, home to over 5 million people. University campuses, the Guadalajara Zoo, and residential neighborhoods overlook the abyss. Hikers descend hundreds of numbered switchbacks to reach the river, where temperatures climb 10 degrees Celsius or 18 degrees Fahrenheit hotter than the rim above. It's a biogeographic island where jaguars, bobcats, and vampire bats thrive in tropical forests surrounded by urban sprawl. And the river that carved this canyon connects to the largest lake in Mexico, which is doing something impossible. Part 21. Giant Rock Marbles. Scattered across the hills near Ahualulco de Mercado lie hundreds of massive stone spheres. Some sources estimate reaching up to 3 meters or 10 feet in diameter and weighing up to several tons. Known as piedras bola or ball stones, they look like they were carved by ancient civilizations, but they're entirely natural. These giant rock marbles formed millions of years ago through a process called concretion, where volcanic ash and mineral-rich water cement together around a nucleus, growing layer by layer like pearls. Erosion eventually freed them from the softer surrounding rock, leaving perfect spheres scattered across the landscape. Local legends claim they're the marbles of ancient giants, and some have been painted with traditional designs by indigenous communities. The Piedras Bola de Jalisco are so unique they attract geologists and tourists from around the world. And hidden not far from these giant marbles, something else rises from the water whenever the rains fail. Part 20. A lava field hiding in the forest. Just 20 kilometers or 12 miles west of Guadalajara, inside the protected Bosque La Primavera, lies a massive volcanic caldera so large you could fit 11 kilometers or 7 miles across it. This isn't ancient history frozen in stone. Its most recent major eruption occurred around 95,000 years ago, but the system still shows signs of activity today. The explosion that created the caldera was catastrophic, ejecting enormous volumes of volcanic material and leaving behind a collapsed crater that slowly filled with forests. Today, hikers walking through pine and oak woodlands are literally standing inside a giant volcanic vent. The caldera still has active geothermal features, including hot springs and fumaroles that vent steam from deep underground. The area is being studied for geothermal energy development, tapping into the same heat source that created the caldera thousands of years ago. And that volcanic activity isn't limited to land. Just off Jalisco's coast, the ocean floor is tearing apart in real time. Part 19. The Middle America Trench off Jalisco's coast. Roughly 100 kilometers or 62 miles off Jalisco's Pacific coast, the ocean floor plunges into one of the deepest trenches on Earth. The Middle America Trench, where the Cocos Plate dives beneath the North American Plate, reaches depths exceeding 6,000 meters or 19,685 feet in some areas. This subduction zone is the engine driving Mexico's volcanic activity, including Volcán de Fuego de Colima. As the Cocos Plate descends into the Earth's mantle, it melts and generates magma that rises to form Mexico's volcanoes. The trench is also responsible for Mexico's most powerful earthquakes. The catastrophic 1985 Mexico City earthquake, which killed thousands, originated along this same subduction zone off Mexico's Pacific coast. The trench moves at roughly 6 centimeters or 2.4 inches per year, meaning the ocean floor off Jalisco's coast is constantly being consumed and recycled deep into the earth. And above that trench, Jalisco's coast hides something far gentler. Part 18. The 3-foot hailstorm. On June 30th, 2019, Guadalajara experienced something that seemed impossible. In the middle of a Mexican summer, over 3 feet or 1 meter of hail buried cars, damaged hundreds of homes, and turned city streets into frozen rivers. Residents woke up to find vehicles completely submerged in ice, while the Mexican army deployed heavy machinery to dig the city out. The hailstorm, caused by a powerful thunderstorm stalling over the same area for hours, dumped so much ice that reports describe accumulations up to 2 meters in drifts. No fatalities were reported, but over 450 homes were damaged and dozens of cars swept away in ice floods. It was a freak event for a city used to summer heat, not glaciers in the streets. And beneath those streets, an ancient volcanic mystery lies frozen in stone. Part 17. Tala's fossil steam pipes. Near the town of Tala, just west of Guadalajara, lies a landscape so bizarre it's considered among the largest known paleofumarolic areas on the planet. The ground is covered in thousands of smooth stone cylinders called fossil steam pipes, formed 95,000 years ago when volcanic steam bubbled up through layers of hot ash. As steam rose through the ash, it altered the minerals chemically, creating smooth stone tubes up to 20 meters or 66 feet long that hardened while the softer ash around them eroded away. The most surreal feature is the wall of Martian eyes, where horizontal pipes jut out of a cliff face in perfect circles, looking exactly like something from an alien planet. The surrounding formations have been nicknamed fairy footstools and goblins, and for good reason. Nothing about this feels like it belongs on Earth. And from these alien landscapes, Jalisco's coast reveals something equally unexpected. Part 16. The deep bay that attracts giant whales. Stretching across both Jalisco and neighboring Nayarit, Banderas Bay is one of the largest bays in all of Mexico. At its deepest point, the bay plunges to over 1,400 meters, nearly a mile straight down, with an average depth of around 300 meters across its floor. Every winter, hundreds of humpback whales migrate from the cold waters of Alaska to Banderas Bay's warm, protected waters to mate and give birth. The bay's natural shape offers protection from predators, while the depth provides safe passage for these giants, some reaching up to 17 meters or 56 feet long and weighing 40 tons. During peak season from December to March, it's not unusual to see mothers teaching calves to breach, or full-grown whales rising right beside boats. The bay is home to over 700 species of fish and is considered one of the best whale-watching destinations in North America. And inland from those whale migrations, an island fortress tells a different story of resistance. Part 15. The Ghost Island. In the middle of Lake Chapala sits Isla de Mezcala, a tiny fortified island with a dark and defiant history. During Mexico's War of Independence in the early 1800s, indigenous rebels held this island fortress against Spanish colonial forces for 4 years, becoming the last holdout in western Mexico. The rebels built fortifications from the ruins of a colonial-era Franciscan monastery and held out from 1812 to 1816, enduring sieges, starvation, and disease. The conflict ended through negotiation rather than conquest, with the rebels securing terms before surrendering. Today, the island is abandoned, its crumbling fortress walls slowly being reclaimed by vegetation. Locals call it the Ghost Island, and boat tours bring visitors to explore the ruins and hear stories of resistance. Isla de Mezcala is proof that even a tiny island can become a symbol of defiance. And that same spirit of identity defines everything Jalisco has given the world. Part 14. Where 3 mountain ranges collide. Jalisco sits at one of the most geologically complex intersections in North America, where 2 massive mountain systems crash together: the Sierra Madre Occidental from the north and the Trans-Mexican Volcanic Belt cutting east to west. And beneath it all, the Jalisco Block, a distinct tectonic fragment, is slowly rifting away from the mainland, adding a third geological force to this already extreme collision. The Sierra Madre Occidental, an ancient volcanic range over 1,250 kilometers or 777 miles long, runs down Jalisco's western edge. The Trans-Mexican Volcanic Belt, a chain of active and dormant volcanoes spanning 1,000 kilometers or 620 miles from coast to coast, cuts through the state's southern portion. This triple collision creates Jalisco's extreme topography: peaks exceeding 4,200 meters or 13,780 feet, deep grabens filled with lakes, and volcanic calderas hidden in forests. It's why Jalisco has deserts, cloud forest, and tropical coasts all within a few hours' drive. And those cloud forests support ecosystems that shouldn't exist this far north. Part 13. The cloud forest that shouldn't exist. High in Jalisco's Sierra Madre Occidental, cloud forests thrive in a climate that seems impossible for tropical Mexico. These forests exist where warm, moist air rises from the Pacific coast and condenses into near-constant mist at elevations above 1,500 meters or 4,900 feet. The moisture supports lush vegetation, including oak and pine, creating ecosystems more typical of Central American highlands than arid Mexico. Endemic species like the military macaw and Mexican long-nosed bat thrive here. The forests also serve as critical water sources, capturing moisture from fog and feeding streams that supply towns below. But deforestation and climate change threaten these fragile ecosystems. Jalisco's cloud forests are biodiversity hotspots hanging by a thread, and where those streams flow, they join a river system that powers an entire region. Part 12. Hydroelectric Staircase. The Rio Grande de Santiago is the only river draining Lake Chapala, flowing northwest from the lake's northeastern corner toward the Pacific Ocean. Along the way, it powers significant hydroelectric infrastructure. The river drops dramatically as it carves through Barranca de Huentitan, losing 520 meters or 1,710 feet of elevation in a short distance. That elevation drop has been harnessed for hydroelectric dams that provide power across western Mexico. However, the river also carries pollution from Guadalajara and upstream agricultural runoff, making it one of Mexico's most contaminated waterways despite its economic importance. The Rio Grande de Santiago is both lifeline and liability, and where the river meets the mountains, life explodes in unexpected ways. Part 11. The soil that built tequila. Tequila isn't just a drink, it's a place, and only specific volcanic landscapes can produce the spirit that bears its name. The town of Tequila sits at the base of Tequila Volcano, a 2,920-meter or 9,580-foot stratovolcano that last erupted 220,000 years ago, but left behind something far more valuable than lava: the perfect soil. The volcanic ash and minerals from Tequila Volcano created iron-rich red soil that's ideal for growing blue agave. Since 1974, Mexican law protects the name tequila through a denomination of origin, meaning only agave grown and distilled in specific regions, primarily Jalisco plus limited areas of 4 neighboring states, can be called tequila. About 90% of all tequila comes from Jalisco alone. The volcanic soil, elevation, and climate create ideal conditions for blue agave to concentrate sugars over 8 to 10 years before harvest. The agave landscape was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2006. Tequila production dates back to the 16th century, when Spanish colonizers introduced distillation techniques to indigenous fermented agave drinks. And in the northwestern corner of Jalisco, that same volcanic soil creates a landscape that looks ripped from another continent. The Los Altos de Jalisco region, sitting over 1,800 meters or 5,900 feet above sea level, receives minimal rainfall and features rolling hills covered in scrub brush, cacti, and red volcanic soil rich in iron. Jalisco refuses to fit into a single climate category, and that extreme diversity, stacked climate zone upon climate zone, creates something no single map can capture. Part 10. The elevation shift that changes everything. Most countries have one climate. Most states have one landscape. Jalisco has at least 5 of each, stacked on top of one another within a few hours' drive. The elevation range between Jalisco's geography swings from sea level on the Pacific coast to peaks exceeding 4,200 meters or 13,780 feet in the Sierra Madre. You can start your morning on a tropical beach in Puerto Vallarta at sea level, drive inland for 3 hours, and find yourself in pine forests with freezing temperatures at 2,500 meters or 8,200 feet elevation. This elevation range creates microclimates that support everything from mangroves and coral reefs to alpine meadows and cloud forests. Jalisco is essentially multiple countries stacked vertically, each with its own weather, wildlife, and ecosystems. And those stacked ecosystems create a biological funnel that scientists are only beginning to understand. Part 9. The biological funnel nobody talks about. Along Jalisco's Pacific coast lies Laguna de Chalacatepec, a shallow coastal lagoon that's one of the most important stopover sites for migratory birds traveling the Pacific Flyway, funneling hundreds of thousands of birds through a single wetland every year, from their breeding grounds in Alaska all the way down to South America. The lagoon's mangrove forests, salt marshes, and mudflats create critical feeding and resting habitat for species making the journey. During peak migration, birdwatchers have recorded over 200 species in a single day, including endangered species like the reddish egret and wood stork. The lagoon also serves as a nursery for commercially important fish and shrimp, supporting local fishing communities. But development, pollution, and water diversion threaten the lagoon's delicate balance. Laguna de Chilacatepec is proof that even small wetlands can have continental importance. And in Jalisco's mountains, ancient cultures still protect their own sacred landscapes. Part 8. The culture that survived everything. In the remote mountains of northern Jalisco and neighboring states, the Huichol people, who call themselves Huichol, have maintained remarkable cultural continuity for centuries, preserving their language, traditions, and spiritual practices despite Spanish colonization and Mexican assimilation pressures. The Huichol are famous for their intricate yarn paintings and beadwork, which depict spiritual visions induced by the ritual use of peyote, a sacred cactus central to their cosmology. Each year, Huichol pilgrims walk hundreds of kilometers to Huiricuta, their sacred desert homeland, to harvest peyote and perform ceremonies connecting them to their ancestors. Their art, now recognized globally, has become synonymous with Mexican folk art, yet remains deeply tied to living spiritual traditions. The Huichol prove that Jalisco isn't just a place of tequila and mariachi. It's a place where ancient cultures still thrive. And those cultures witness the evolution of traditions that shaped Jalisco's modern identity. Part 7. Guadalajara, founded 4 times. Most cities are founded once. Guadalajara was founded 4 times before it finally stuck. Spanish conquistadors first established the settlement in 1532 at Nochislan, now in Zacatecas, but indigenous attacks forced them to relocate within a year. The second attempt in 1533 near Tala lasted 2 years before more attacks forced another move. The third location near Tlacotan in 1535 also failed. Finally, on February 14, 1542, the city was established at its current site in the Atemajac Valley, and it survived. Each relocation was driven by violent resistance from indigenous groups, particularly during the Mixtón War of 1540 through 1542, one of the largest indigenous uprisings against Spanish colonization. The fourth and final location proved defensible, and Guadalajara became the capital of Nueva Galicia in 1560. Today, it's Mexico's second largest metropolitan area, with over 5 million people. And that city, built on its fourth attempt, became the capital of a state hiding an agricultural identity most of the world has never been told about. Part 6. Second largest avocado producer. When people think of Mexican avocados, they think of Michoacán. But Jalisco is Mexico's second largest avocado producer, accounting for roughly 11 to 12% of national production, or over 250,000 tons per year. Jalisco's avocado orchards are concentrated in 75 municipalities, with over 21,000 hectares planted. About 85% of Jalisco's orchards are irrigated with drip or micro sprinkler systems, giving the state one of the highest yields per hectare in Mexico. In 2022, the United States approved Jalisco as the second Mexican state authorized to export avocados to the U.S. market, joining Michoacán. Today, 11 packing facilities in Jalisco are certified for U.S. export. The state's volcanic soil, elevation, and climate create ideal conditions for Hass avocados, the variety that dominates 85% of global production. And Jalisco's agricultural heritage runs far deeper than avocados. Part 5. The Mexican rodeo born from ranching traditions. Charrería, Mexico's national sport, developed strongly in Jalisco and central western Mexico. This traditional form of rodeo showcases horseback skills, elaborate costumes, and deep cultural identity rooted in ranching traditions dating back to the colonial hacienda system. Charros, the horsemen who perform in Charrería events, compete in skills like calf roping, bull riding, and horse reining in areas called lienzos. Recognized by UNESCO as intangible cultural heritage, Charrería is both sports and living history. Jalisco became a major center for this tradition, and the wide-brimmed sombrero, now iconic worldwide, was essential gear for charros. The sombrero's wide brim wasn't just fashion. It was essential protection from the intense sun during long days working cattle on horseback across Jalisco's open plains. Today, sombreros appear in festivals, parades, and cultural celebrations worldwide, but their association with Jalisco's ranching heritage remains strong. Jalisco's ranching heritage didn't just influence Mexico, it helped define the cowboy culture that spread across North America. And that cultural identity is preserved in towns scattered across the mountains. Part 4. The 12 Pueblos Mágicos. Jalisco is home to 12 Pueblos Mágicos, or magical towns, more than almost any other Mexican state. These towns, designed by Mexico's Secretariat of Tourism, are celebrated for their cultural significance, historical charm, and commitment to preserving traditions. Towns like Tequila, Tapalpa, and Ajijic offer visitors cobblestone streets, colonial architecture, artisan workshops, and festivals that haven't changed in centuries. Each has its own identity. Tequila for agave distilleries, Ajijic for its lakeside artist colony, Tapalpa for its pine forest and stone architecture. Among them, Mazamitla stands out for feeling transplanted from Central Europe. Sitting at 2,200 meters or 7,200 feet elevation in the Sierra del Tigre Mountains, Mazamitla is surrounded by dense pine forests so thick they're often called the Mexican Alps or Switzerland of Mexico. Unlike the rest of tropical Mexico, Mazamitla features alpine-style wooden cabins, misty forests, and temperatures that drop near freezing in winter. And deep in Jalisco's Sierra Madre Occidental sits San Sebastián del Oeste, a once prominent silver mining town dating back to the 1600s that feels frozen in time. Jalisco's collection of these towns proves the state isn't just culturally rich, it's a living museum spread across mountains, valleys, and lakeshores. And one city ties it all together. Part 3. Mexico's Silicon Valley. Most people outside Mexico have no idea how important Guadalajara is. Known as Mexico's Silicon Valley, Guadalajara serves as the nation's main software development and tech manufacturing hub. Major global tech firms operate in the metro area, drawn by a steady pipeline of engineering talent from institutions like the Universidad de Guadalajara and Tecnológico de Monterrey. Economically, Jalisco ranks third among Mexican states, driven by tech, agribusiness, and manufacturing. The city also hosts the Guadalajara International Book Fair, the largest Spanish-language publishing event in the world, and the International Mariachi Festival. It's where tradition and innovation collide, creating a city that's both deeply Mexican and globally connected. And that blend of old and new defines the entire state. Part 2. The expat colony nobody expected. Lake Chapala's northern shore, particularly the towns of Ajijic and Chapala, hosts one of the largest American and Canadian expat communities in the world, with an estimated 30,000 foreign residents. The area's mild year-round climate, low cost of living, and proximity to Guadalajara have attracted retirees since the 1950s. The expat population has created a unique cultural blend where English and Spanish coexist. American-style cafes sit next to traditional Mexican markets, and annual festivals celebrate both Mexican Independence Day and U.S. Thanksgiving. The influx has driven up property values and sparked debates about gentrification, but it's also created economic opportunities for local businesses. Lake Chapala's expat colony is proof that Jalisco's appeal extends far beyond Mexico, and that appeal rests partly on something the state does better than almost anywhere else. Part 1. Jalisco didn't follow Mexico. It built it. Here's the paradox. When people think Mexico, they think of tequila and mariachi. And while Mexican culture is far more diverse than these symbols, a remarkable concentration of them emerged from one state. Tequila production became possible because of Jalisco's unique combination of volcanic soil, elevation, and climate that made blue agave cultivation ideal. Mariachi evolved from the specific cultural blend of indigenous, Spanish, and ranching traditions that collided in Jalisco's towns and haciendas. Even the rodeo culture that influenced North America traces significant roots to Jalisco's Charrería. The world sees these as universally Mexican, yet they're all deeply connected to this state's extreme terrain, volcanic soil, elevation shifts, and cultural fusion. Jalisco didn't just contribute to Mexican identity. It shaped many of the symbols the world recognizes as quintessentially Mexican. So what happens when one state buries a city under a meter of ice in July, hides an active volcano with 300,000 neighbors on borrowed time, and carves a Grand Canyon into the edge of its largest city? Jalisco is proof that culture, geography, and extremes don't just coexist, they create each other. If these facts changed how you see Mexico, like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon, because there are still wild places, hidden stories, and unbelievable landscapes left to explore. See you on the next journey.